I make my own found objects, and if you look, like, turn the camera that way, you'll see on this wall, there's all these little objects I make. And I make them just to see what they look like, with two colors, two materials, two shapes. And then when I start building a piece like this, I basically will make a plateau, a plane, a stand, or a table kind of platform. And then I start populating it with these parts. And once I get enough on there, then I start taking them off, or I adjust them, or I paint them different. So there's kind of it's like a collaging practice I do here. I like to respect the environment, and I like to save money too. So I save everything. I've got all my pen, my nibs, from high school. I've got my paintbrushes. I got my angles when I do drafting. I got my old, tri-square. Nothing gets lost in my life. If you look around, it's got like a big jewelry box in here. People have said.
So let's take a look over here.
So another teacher I had at the time when I went to college was Tom Doyle, and you worked for him, and we stayed in contact. I became a good friend of his, and every time I go visit him, he'd always say, Jim, do you need an extra saw? So I did inherit a number of these saws from him. And I'll show you this one here. I would love, because it has a steel handle, and he always signed his pieces with this little monogram, this little TD he made up. But that's a beautiful sway back.
Let's take a look at that TD for a second. Just hold it up. I'll come in on it. That's cool. He etched that in there.
Yeah.
Oh, and he wrote his name.
Yeah, he put his name here, and then that was his monogram. And that was his color. So in school, every teacher would bring in tools to share with students, but they each painted their tools a different color. So Tom's was green, and Larry's, I think, was, blue, and there was another teacher who was orange. So whenever they get lost in the pile of tools, there's so-and-so, there's so-and-so. So they wouldn't lose their stuff, and they could keep sharing with us.
That's cool. One of the reasons I think your work is so fluid is because you're extremely comfortable with all of the techniques and tasks that are required to make a sculpture that is freestanding and that needs elements of joinery. Like, you're really comfortable with all those skills. Let's take a look at some of the joinery in any one of the pieces that you want to talk about.
Sure. So let's say in this little square right here, I made this framework. Actually, I made these 4 segments, which again, Douglas fir. I painted them and I connected them, and then I built this frame. And if you look, it's a combination of, it's a butt joint, but I put it's like a nail in there, like acting like a dowel. And then like over here, I did a little dado, and I had a little mistake piece over here somewhere. Well, here, when I made this piece, it wasn't sitting right, so I made this kind of little piece that sits on top and clamps it down. So a lot of times, you make problems for yourself, and then what you do is you solve them. So sometimes the idiom, the language comes out of the necessity of making things stand square. I like things to be plumb. And also, things should look right. And by right, I mean, I'm not trying to prescribe that there's a right for everything, but things should be right to themselves. And I try to make these, I'm not a writer, but I admire writers because they can make all the words come together nicely. So this is kind of like my version of writing, I would say. This is Douglas fir. It has a very strong figuration. And I got a 4x4. I trimmed it up to square. I knocked off the corners, and then I cut it into slices that are about the same thickness, about a ½ inch. And then I painted them and then turned it so that the grain is flows out, flows in, flows out, flows in, and creates kind of a pure kind of, it's almost like a tapestry, the way the grain is running in and out. And then the big forms, and then the colors. So right in this little piece here, these 8 chunks of wood, I've got a whole thing happening, a whole world. And I kind of like to do that in a piece, to have very focused moments, and then it expands to another area, and then focuses and expands to another area. So I like sculptures to be very three-dimensional. I like them to be almost time-based, because if I get the viewer to walk around them, they're not static objects anymore. And that's kind of one of my goals, to give a viewer an experience over time. You know, they go like, oh wow, there's more stuff there. They'd always kind of shocked them, what should I have in here? But it does keep the work clean. So I had a problem for a long time. I'd have to every month vacuum every piece up, and it became kind of like a, it was more duty. So this is from, that was Leslie's show at the bottom shelf. And above that is the year before, so that's 18, 17, 16 pretty much.
So it's your archive.
Yeah, at work I don't want to put into storage just yet because I still may show it. And also I think it helps me kind of contextualize where I was, and I can think about scale changes. And then when I moved to the walnut, which became kind of exclusive in 18, because the work changed a lot for me.
Tell me a little about that, when you moved to the walnut pieces.
Well, I think, I was painting on the pine and poplar and various firs, but the walnut became almost like when a painter would put a dark ground on a canvas, and then everything paint you put on top of it really responds clearly. It's all uniform responses. So the walnut being very even, it's different colors at times, but it's fairly even, the value. It does something. It's very dry, and my friend Nick Giz, I asked him, why it works for you. He goes, I'll tell you why, Jim. Because the walnut absorbs light and the paint reflects it. So I immediately got kind of like areas where it kind of like sat back and areas where they came forward. So recently I was at this place called Build It Green, and they have a lot of reclaimed lumber. And I got these 4 pieces, which are all from the same tree, 4 slabs with the crotch right here. And they're waiting for me. One's going to become a table, and one's going to become a sculpture, and I got 2 more to think about for the future.
And they're walnut.
Yeah.
Yeah. Many people don't know what inside of a tree looks like.
One revelation I had was when I cut a tree open is that has never been seen in the world before. Because it's inside of a tree, right? So it's kind of like when you cut it open, you reveal something. Even though the all grain looks the same, but it all looks different. So when I cut it open, that's kind of my cosmic revelation that has never been seen before when it got cut.